Hello, Dave here, and today's a good day. It's new shoe day. Let's get this open. And today we're going to have a look at what Asics have marketed the world's most comfortable shoe, the Asics Gel Nimbus 25. Hello all, so I'm about a couple of miles into my run now, and I thought I'd just give you an initial impression. So first thing that really did it for me was that upper. So just feeling it now, it's probably one of the most comfortable uppers I've ever ran in for any running shoe. So that's a big plus to start with. And the midsole, it's kind of surprised me actually, because I was thinking it would be really soft like the Invincible Run 2s which I have, but it's a lot more controlled than that. It's a little bit firmer but still quite cushioned. Okay, so another thing I've noticed about the midsole is there's quite a distinct rocker which I can feel. I think I'm probably heel striking, but I'm going to the toe off extremely quickly, and that's down to that rocker, so that's also quite a nice feeling. But anyway, initial impressions are quite good, and I'm going to take these shoes to about 40 to 50 miles and then carry on with my review once I get more of a feel for the shoe. Okay, bye for now. So it's been about a week since that initial run that you saw. I've racked up about 60 miles in these shoes now, and I think I've got a better understanding of what these shoes are about. So firstly, I'll go over some stats before I go into a more in-depth look at what I liked and what I didn't like about this shoe. Okay, so let's get the price out of the way first. These shoes are not cheap. They retail here in the UK for £175. Luckily I had a voucher to use, so they cost me a lot less, but definitely not a cheap shoe overall. Okay, so let's talk about the upper quickly. So it's made of a soft engineered knit, which Asics don't seem to have given a name that I could find at least, but they've said that 75% of this upper is actually recycled. So I can see that Asics have been developing their sustainable practices recently, as many of their other shoes are following this trend as well. In terms of fit, it seems to be true to size for me, and the stretchy material in the toe box seems to accommodate my wide feet quite well. Okay, so moving on to the midsole here. So the midsole is what Asics call their Flight Foam Blast Plus Eco material. That's kind of a mouthful for me, but I feel like it's a tad different to the standard Flight Foam Blast Plus, which the Nova Blast 3 uses at least. I think the Eco version's a tad firmer, so it'd be interesting to see what the actual differences are, but I couldn't find anything online. It's a bit strange though, as the Nimbus 25 also has a pure gel layer here in the heel. So in theory it should be softer, but I found it's a tad firmer than the Nova Blast 3 for me. Following on from the midsole, let's talk about the stack height quickly. So at the heel there's 41.5mm of stack, and at the forefoot here there's 33.5mm of stack. So there's a lot of foam in this shoe. That leads me onto the weight really. How does all this midsole impact the weight? Let me just put these on my trusty scales. So they are weighing in my UK size 10.5 at 333 grams. Comparing that to the Invincible Run 2s, which I've also got here, these are weighing in at 348 grams. So the Nimbus 25s are actually a bit lighter than the Invincible Runs, which I didn't expect, to be honest. Okay, so my first like, and I think my favourite part of this shoe is the upper. So it's made of this really soft material, and the material also has a bit of give to it, so it accommodates my wider feet in the toe box. The longest run I've done in it so far is 30 kilometers, and after that run I had 0 hotspots or any sort of discomfort at all. I also think this shoe would be good for anyone who does a lot of walking, as I can quite happily spend all day in this shoe and not want to take it off. Sticking with the upper, my second like is the lockdown of this shoe. So there's a very comfortable stretchy tongue on this shoe, and there's sort of an internal band on the inside which just holds my forefoot in place. And the lacing combined with the stretchy tongue and this internal band, I feel like it just hugs my foot instead of gripping it tightly in any sort of uncomfortable way. But I still feel like I get that secure lockdown without any heel slippage, so I haven't had any issues at all in this shoe. Okay, so moving on to my third like, and that for me is the cushioning of this shoe, and in particular the combination of the cushioning and the stability which this midsole provides. I wouldn't say the cushioning is over the top like some of Nike's Zoom X offerings, but it's just a sweet spot where it will protect your legs and you'll be able to do long runs or recovery days in this with no trouble at all, while also having that extra added stability, so you don't need to think too much about the surfaces you're running on if you're running on any uneven pavement or cobbles, etc. The Nimbus 25 is also stable enough to confidently go around tight corners without feeling like you're potentially going to turn an ankle or you have to run wide or anything like that. And I think this is largely down to the foam being slightly firmer than some of the competitors like the Nike Invincible runs, while also having this really wide base to land on. The only way I can describe the midsole in this shoe is reassuring, even if it's not as exciting as maybe Zoom X. My last like is this midsole rocker, which I think I mentioned in my initial run as well. As you can see, it's fairly aggressive at the front, and I think that just helps you if you're heel striking or midfoot striking to get back onto your toes. I've noticed that at easy paces it's given me quite a nice turnover, and it sort of helps hide the bulk of the Nimbus 25 quite a lot. Okay, so those were my positives about the Asics Gel Nimbus 25. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect shoe, and there have been some negative aspects that I've picked up about this shoe, so we'll just go over those now. Okay, so for my first dislike, I just wanted to chat about how one-dimensional I think this shoe is. So you basically just put them on, you go out and you do an easy run. As soon as I've tried to pick the pace up in this shoe, all of a sudden I felt like I'm running in a heavy, bulky shoe. The weight's no longer hidden, and that midsole just doesn't seem to be that responsive at higher tempos, which I guess is fine, as Asics have designed this shoe to be the most comfortable shoe in the world, and I guess it's not meant to be a tempo shoe. But if you're just looking at getting one shoe to do everything, this wouldn't really be a shoe I'll take to do speed sessions. So if you just want one shoe to do everything, I might consider getting the Asics Nova Blast 3, which will do a bit of everything instead of just being a great shoe for those longer, easier runs. Okay, so moving on to my second dislike, and it's just a small thing which I picked up on, but I've noticed that when running in this shoe, my feet have been getting a little bit warm. And here in the UK, we're currently in winter, but when we get to summer, I'd be a little bit worried about the ventilation in this shoe. There doesn't seem to be much airflow going through that upper. So if you're in a hotter climate, I might be worried about that. Okay, so I'm going to try and wrap this up now. I'm going to go over my overall thoughts of this shoe, and the big question, would I recommend it? My go-to shoe before I started running in the Asics Gel Nimbus 25s was the Nike Invincible Run 2s, which I also have. But over the last week, I've found myself reaching for these a lot more often, and I think that's just testament to how easy and effortless the Asics Gel Nimbus 25 makes easy pace day-to-day running feel. If you're doing high mileage weeks and you're just looking for a comfortable, dependable shoe to eat up those easy miles,
I'd say no shoe that I've ran in so far does it quite as well as the Asics Gel Nimbus 25s. Although some shoes do come close, and that's the problem. Before I ran in these, I didn't have any issues with the comfort of my Asics Nova Blast 3s or my Nike Invincible Run 2s, which are also running. And they're also a lot cheaper at the moment because they're in sales. So in conclusion, if money is no object to you, and your wife or your husband isn't going to kick you out for spending £175 on a pair of running shoes, then get the Asics Gel Nimbus 25s. Although if you're looking at spending a bit less, then there are alternatives out there which I've mentioned. You can get the Asics Nova Blast 3s or the Nike Invincible Run 2s, which are on sale at the moment. And they're basically just cheaper alternatives which I think are almost as comfortable as a shoe, and they'll also do a few more up-tempo runs as well quite happily.